Citizens of the Spark, or as I like to call it, COTS, is a card drafting game for 1 to 5 players. Players will be using these anthropomorphic cards. Anthropomorphic cards to create combos, score points, and possibly wreak havoc on your opponent's cities, or their own tableau of drafted cards that they've accumulated. And tableau, that's kind of a word that we only use exclusively in modern board gaming. You don't really hear that anywhere else. Or maybe you'll live peacefully among them. Who knows? It's in the cards. And speaking of cards, there are a ton of cards in this game. I mean, a lot of cards. It comes with 30 different character cards, and you'll use 7 to 10 of them, depending on the player count each game. And as you've probably noticed, they're all quite beautifully illustrated. And with so many characters that come in this box, go ahead and say hello to variety and replayability. Preview copy provided by the amazing people at Thunderworks Games. If you find any value or entertainment in this video, please consider clicking that subscribe button. Thanks! So if this is your first game of Citizens of the Spark, the rulebook has a pre-chosen set of characters to kind of ease you into the gameplay, which is nice. Or if you're feeling a little more adventurous and your boisterous buddies are over for a Friday night of games, there is a suggested group for a more player interaction game, a more take that, a more sit around the table and stew and be mad at each other for 30 minutes set of characters. Or there's even a suggested set of characters to provide a more balanced strategic game. Or there's a set of randomizer cards. So you just shuffle these 30 cards and draw out 7 to 10, however many you need, depending on the player count, and then you add those cards into the deck. Either way, setup is quite simple. After you shuffle the deck, you just make 3 rows, each containing 3 cards, and then deal each player 2 cards, which will be the beginning of their city. On their turn, a player will choose one of these 3 rows and add all of those cards to their city or tableau. So if I chose this row down here, you will stack any matching cards. So I have 2 scouts, so I will stack them this way, and then this champion, I will stack that onto the champion that I previously had. Now when you get multiple copies of a character, this will amplify their ability, making them stronger, and it adds kind of a push your luck mechanism to the game. So like, do I use this rancher right now to gain 1 spark or victory point for every 2 of these plant icons in my city? Or do I wait until I gain another rancher? Then I will gain 1 victory point per single plant icon in my city. So after a player has chosen the row of cards to add to their city, they may then choose one of their characters to activate. So maybe I chose to activate my champion. So I would slide my champion forward, showing to the rest of the table that I am activating my champion. Now I would get to do the champion's action, and then any other players around the table going clockwise would be able to activate one of their champions as well. When you activate one of your characters in your city, you do discard one of the cards. So if a player to my left decided to activate their champion, they would discard one of their champion cards. And then once it goes around the table and everyone has had the option to activate their champion, then I would discard one of my champion cards, and then any of the remaining rows out here on the display would receive a spark, and then 3 new cards are dealt out. And then it's the next player's turn. So yes, activating the citizens that are in your city is vital to winning. However, you do need to be cautious because they do get discarded, making future actions with that character less powerful. And I absolutely love that mechanism in this game, where one player chooses a card, activates it, and then everyone else during that player's turn gets to activate that same card if they have one, or choose to activate it. It really cuts down on the downtime between turns, and it makes players a little more interested in what the other players are doing during their turn. I know this isn't the first game to do that. Other games have done this in the past, notably Puerto Rico was one that I recall that had a very similar mechanism, but Citizens of the Spark does a very good job of implementing that into the gameplay. So gameplay will continue like that around the table, players taking the characters, taking any sparks that have accumulated on those rows, and once the deck runs out, gameplay is over, and the player with the most victory points is the victor. So as you've probably noticed, this game is quite simple, but the nuance is in the different characters and their abilities. So what do some of them do? I'm glad you asked. Most of the cards in this game have this variable symbol, and this means that you check the strength of that character, or basically how many copies of that character you have. So in this case, I have 3 ranchers, so I would go by the 3 power here. So I would gain 2 points for per every single plant icon. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them in my city. So that would grant me 2 times 8, 16 points. Now that's totally awesome. Now since I activated the rancher, though, he does go away. Now if I were to do the rancher action again on a later turn, I would only gain 1 victory point per plant icon. Similar to that is the champion card. However, this one, you are actually looking at your neighbor's city. So if your neighbor has a bunch of swords, then maybe the champion cards are the ones for you. So this would grant you 1, 2, or 3 victory points per sword in a neighbor's city. These scouts here, these are pretty slick because you gain 3 points when activated, but you also add cards from the deck. So here I have 2 of them, so I would add 2 cards from the deck to my city. You know, the scientist allows you to gain victory points, which is totally awesome. However, you do have to discard a card that is in your city. So if I had some outcasts, an outcast might be a good card to get rid of because some of the cards have in-game scoring. However, the outcast sucks and you lose points for having them in your city. So it might be good to get some scientists to get rid of those outcasts. Some of the cards have an attack on them, as noted by this little fire symbol. And this one will actually let you take sparks or victory points from players who have more economic symbols than you. But also to kind of counteract those, some of the cards will also have a reaction. And should they be attacked, this advisor will gain you 2 points, and he will also gain you possibly 20 victory points in the game if you have 3 advisors. So whenever somebody tries to zig, you can always zag. And since this is a preview copy, things are subject to change. Over the years, I have grown to be a very large Thunderworks games fan. I really enjoy all the games in their Ulos series, such as Role Player and Lockup. However, I do get very excited when they release something outside of the Ulos universe, because those games are also really good as well, such as Tenpenny Parks and Cape May, just to name a few. But there is really a lot to enjoy here in Citizens of the Spark. It's kind of my favorite way of game where it's simple to teach. You can teach it in just a few moments, but there is a lot of strategy, a lot of deep strategy. And the replayability is insane because you've got the 30 different cards and you can mix them up in all kinds of crazy game sets, ranging from friendly set collecting games to just mean take that games and anywhere in between. And I like the way that your character's powers grow as you gain more copies of that card, because then it kind of is a strange push your luck mechanism. Like, do I use this card now while it's only this strong, or do I wait in hopes that another one of those cards reveals itself and I'm able to snatch it before the other players do? But there's only 10 copies of each card. So when you're playing a larger player count, like 4 or 5, if there's a great card out there, other players may be more prone to snatching it up before you get a chance. And as you can probably tell from the video or some of the pictures, the game is beautifully illustrated. All the character cards are awesome. The point tokens, it's kind of cool that they're not just normal solid colored cubes. They got little sparkles in them. The victory point tokens, they're nice and chunky. And there are wonderful trays that stack and have a lid to keep them secure in the box and do a fabulous job of keeping the components together during gameplay on the table. And when I first saw the size of this box, I did think, wow, that's kind of a ridiculously huge box for a card game. But then I opened it and realized that there's all these nice dividers to keep the 300 cards organized and in place, and to store those storage bins for the victory point tokens. The size of the box is justified. And being able to activate cards during other players' turns, that is such a great design. I love how it keeps the downtime between turns at a minimum. And I didn't have time to go over every single card in this video. However, there are some very interesting cards in there. And some of the cards will allow you to convert cards, which is basically you take a card and you flip it over. Now that card acts as a copy of a card that you would slide it underneath. However, the problem is, say you have 2 converted cards and then an agitator on top. Once you take the agitator action and activate that card and you discard it, you're left with just 2 of those converted cards. And those converted cards are then discarded because they are no longer paired up with another card. You can't just move them around. And speaking of the agitator, not to ruin any surprises, he lives up to his name. And so does the Outcast. The Outcast card totally sucks. everyone hates the Outcast. However, sometimes the Outcast is paired up with some really nice cards, so you suck it up and you take an Outcast. But remember, there's other cards that can get rid of other cards. So maybe you get another card to get rid of that Outcast. Or maybe you get a card that allows you to convert a card and then you convert an Outcast. So you flip it over and then use it as a copy of a different card. There's just so many interesting combos in this game, and with the wide variety of different character cards, there is a whole plethora of discoverable combos. So easy to teach, little downtime, a ton of replayability. That is Citizens of Spark, coming soon to Kickstarter. Check the link in the description below to check out the Kickstarter page. I think Thunderworks Games may have another hit on their hands. And please consider clicking there, or wherever it pops up, of another video of mine about a different Thunderworks game.